Dalagam Nimrti Kirti, Gershon Sambar Kirgawan, Chodan, American Raptirti, Sadan London, Vantevino, Native Karva Varmala, Dino Sumchok Temperature, Dino Simpson Namturjan, Narnum Mejan Deverger, Maki Karva Varmala, Zedan Kum de Kernes, Tejan Kumba, Meshi, de Afrochana Churtondo. Sunji Karva Varmana, the Doshamba Gumjirte, Simpson Shiva Gamambu, no Simi Brunsbrush, Yestin Jimbi, no dona, the Doshom, the Dosholam Yamberature, Shantusan, Quarturnum, Damjandamberka, Gaurashit, Sandijan, the Janeba, Saman Jabanyara, Simjan Namla Pambi, Samjan Dona, Dendro. Journey don't do any and draw up to Tambana, Tamjan to Churtondo. Dave Shir Simpson, Dave Shir Tamcher Stone Bates. Dave Shir Nam Tagla. Te shir number and dream shid chang, Bopolong shir nam jangton. Sancton bala, Sancton Arton, Bernam Rapton, Jumbro shid. Te dogler nid, Manjero shid, Mewi nana Pamartara, Yang Mayan Terton de Devjin do Bab Sancton, Yang Mayan Terton, Samjin, Matson Nam Circle, Jepar Nam the Vishir, Dochak Chik journeys. 대덕 선제 이신 곳 선제 남라 판비 sem진 남라 판비 시르 중마당의 대혼당 단난동당 롬보 침보 딱던지 sem진 우르보 남라는 잠시퍼 때르 저르 강라 짐바요 대덕 상집 semkit스 ngarjir kamba sem진 라 대덕 자진 초지르데 ngarjir 근장 좀 내서 Lamid Shanchim sort of Jew, Jitok Simpson Nalano, Dr. Deim Danand, Dead Magic Jinne, Young, Shanchim Donner, Number Shedder, Dead Ringamun, Shibaye, Tong Samber Shojerde, Zotan Dei, Satum Down, Dombalan, Simpson Good. Rumdru Ship is Simpson, Jigba may be in Drumtone, Brandon Yukdash and the Gerald, Mariana, Never and Draw, Young. Yanlak Gandang Ganam, Ji Simjin Chula, Garjirapa, Tapjin Shinda, Labadang, Shara Dogna Tamjirton, Dead of Lupan Taishan, Shoyer, Namjang Tai, Yishin Tai, Zobena, Jochum Tai, Jur, Shida, Gara Dogna, Shiva Dang, Gara Shiva, Trogirna, Jundan Sanji, Namjijan, Dei Yondanam Tabjud, Ganam Sherib, Mebai, Simjang Mamba, Matoba, Hibi Chunda Tujirna. Shanjim chokdo summer mon devjan shabi ru ki lego damba wo.
Let's now continue with the Vimalakirti Sutra. Now we're on the 8th chapter. the chapter of Buddhahood, or the path of Buddhahood. In the previous classes, we've already talked about how the Bodhisattva of universally manifest the form body asked Vimalakirti about his parents, his wife and sons, relatives, and provisions, and so on. And first, Vimalakirti replied with verses. At first, it talks about his provisions and retinues. According to Master Huiyuan's commentary on the Vimalakirti Sutra, the commentary of translation, he categorized all these verses in terms of, at first, he manifests form, different types of forms of sentient beings to benefit others, such as Dharma texts and mantras, as well arts and craftsmanship. As well as how he benefits the heterodox practitioners as a person who's ordained, as a monastic person. And now let's continue. Around this part, according to Master Huiyuan, he talks about how the bodhisattvas have the freedom to transform and change spontaneously with great freedom. He has all different sorts of deportments as well as skills. Over here in this part, there are things that talks about how he benefited beings in forms of sentient beings as well as in forms of material. Majority of people would consider that Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are something that's really far away, such as the Buddha who was ordained 2,500 years ago. That was the Buddha. And the Bodhisattvas, such as and lots of Buddha's actions are very similar to what Jesus used to do as well, the miraculous actions, as well as bodhisattvas, such as Manjushri, Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattvas with the 8 bodhisattvas as representations of the great bodhisattvas. And there are people who would consider that the bodhisattvas are just great people who are here to help sentient beings. I think that's what majority of the mundane beings would consider. But according to Mahayana Mahayana texts, once we really dig into the text, we can see that, in fact, the bodhisattvas are everywhere. In fact, that's how they manifest. That's one level of thinking of it. And the other level is, in fact, not only that they manifest as sentient beings, they also manifest as forces as well as some materials. They would manifest in such a way to give blessings. In fact, not many people would consider that's bodhisattvas, and they never really thought of bodhisattvas in such a way. The Buddhism that all people consider all people would recognize is called the common vehicle. That is the Mahayana vehicle, the vehicle of celestial or transcendence of worldly dharma, and all of such is called common vehicle. But there are also the certain aspect where things are not able to be measured. Those things are not really taught in the common vehicle. But from the common beings or sentient beings, the majority of people who would believe in, that's called the common vehicle. But more than that, Buddhism is more profound. I think we should really dig into that aspect, although it is not accepted fully by all people around the esoteric or exoteric Buddhism. In fact, they're not fitting for everyone to study. For believers, non-believers, I really think that it's important to have detailed analysis. Otherwise, the profound meaning of Buddhism cannot be grasped. I think majority of us are only thinking of Buddhism from the common vehicle aspect, or only accepting the teachings of Buddhism from aspect that you can understand. Whatever transcends or whatever surpasses our mentality, our philosophy, our thinking, then all of those are only accepted as folklores. In fact, this is not really a proper way of accepting Buddhism. A proper way of learning anything for a wise person, I think they would first of all to spend time to analyze as well as study, so that they will continue to study to the fullest until they come to a conclusion. Therefore, it's quite important to have profound wisdom to make choices. Don't come to hasty conclusions based on other people's ideas and other people's opinions. If you only accept other people's opinion and give up whatever you believe in right away, in fact, that's not Mahayana practitioners' action. That's not people of modern time who are considered as wise people and use their logic to analyze. Therefore, for things that really surpass our intelligence, surpass our knowledge base, I think we should invest time to analyze before we come to any conclusions. Let it be astrophysics, or science, as well as black hole, or all of those profound meanings or profound knowledge that's behind it are in fact quite difficult to understand. And people used to say that the black hole looks just like the sun and the moon that we drew. I'm not sure if it is true, but let it be the Big Bang theory or the black hole. For people who are not in that field of studies, when we hear things like that, it's very difficult for us to follow. In fact, for Buddhism, it is exactly the same. For Buddhists who study for a long period of time, and for people who study for a very short period of time, who don't have much wisdom, and who didn't really invest lots of time and diligence in terms of study, then they shouldn't come to conclusion very quickly, so that it is only fair for them to only come to understanding and conclusion after long and logical analysis. Not only the bodhisattvas manifest as ascension beings who have a form and have a soul, but they also manifest in forms of insentient or materialistic things, such as the sun or moon, celestial beings such as Brahman, as well as Ishvara. They would manifest in such a way. As we talked earlier, Master Hui Yuan said this part talks about how bodhisattvas has the freedom of miraculous actions or miraculous transformations. As the sun, they brings light and warmth to this world, and as well as the moon. Some manifest in the form of celestial beings, which has great power. There are people who engage in different religions where they would believe in celestial beings as a governor, as a creator. Not only they would manifest as those, they would also manifest themselves as earth, water, wind, and fire, as the four elements. Normally, people would consider that the sun and the moon, they follow their very routes of traveling. Astrophysicists, they have their ways of calculating, and as well as people who does calendars, they have a way of calculating the timing of such as well. How could also the bodhisattvas manifest themselves as earth, water, wind, and fire? How could the bodhisattvas manifest in such a way? In the classics of Dharma Garden with Grove of Gems, it says that may I manifest as earth, boundless, wide, and long, thus for the whole living beings being able to be their true refuge. May become the earth that is vast, where all sentient beings could rely upon the earth and take refuge. Similarly, it has more verses where it talks about may I become the wind, become the water, become the fire, become the space. Whenever you have time, I think you should read into this part where there are many verses. In the aspiration chapter of Bodhicharyavatara, also talks about how bodhisattvas aspire to be materialistic manifestation as well. The sun brings light as well as warmth. And water could quench thirst, and wind brings some joy. Whenever we chant some kind of aspiration chantings, such as Maitreya's aspiration, as well as Sukhavati's the aspiration to be reborn in Sukhavati, and in the Bodhicharyavatara, the aspiration that's written within as well. All of those aspirations has lots of profound meanings infused within. So I think as Mahayana practitioners, you should aspire, may I become the four elements to benefit sentient beings. Become a road, become a bridge, become a bed rest, and so on. All of those things are necessary, as well as it could bring happiness to people. Usually we don't see those materialistic things as the manifestation of bodhisattvas, but in fact we can contemplate as such. According to Master Huiyan's categorization of this aspect, it talks about how the bodhisattvas in difficult times save the sentient beings from their suffering. So the first one, it talks about over here, this part, it talks about the three kalpas. The first one is kalpa of epidemic. Second one is kalpa of famines. And third one is kalpa of warfare. Those are the things that would happen in the Dark Age. When there are epidemics in the middle of a kalpa, that's when people's life expectancy is just 10 years old. And around that time, there are great epidemics spreading in the world, and the sentient beings would get ill and would get epidemics, would die after 7 months and 7 days. Only just a few people could live after the 7 months and 7 days. That's the epidemic, the kalpa of epidemic in the Dark Age. During such great difficulty, the bodhisattva would manifest himself as medicine plants, as great medicine, where whenever people would take them, that would eradicate the sentient being's illness and eliminate the host of poisons as well as suffering. So that's the aspirations they made. On one hand, that's going to help. On one hand, we could see that this is what's going to happen in the Dark Age. On the other hand, what does kalpa mean? A kalpa means a long period of time. It also means that when some epidemic and some kind of illness is spreading for a long period of time, that's when we could make the aspiration of healing from the illness. In the Great Jewel Heap Sutra, where it says, where it told the story of a great medicine prince, this great medicine prince talks about how this prince, whenever touching or in contact with any sentient beings, any people who are ill, the ill person would get healed very quickly. Whenever people are in contact with others, the people with sickness would get recovered. At first, during his stay in the world, he healed many people. And even after he passed away, his ashes And the place where he was buried could also heal people from their sickness. Even the wind which blows across the body of the Prince of Great Medicine and then touches another ill person would also heal their sickness. This great medicine princess was the previous life of the Buddha Shakyamuni. Because he made the aspiration of relieving others from sickness, from illness. At first, he made the aspiration of easing others from their physical illness, and then eventually the Shakyamuni Buddha aspired to ease people's mental sickness or mental suffering. So whenever you're sick, when you're ill, you should make the aspiration. You should make supplication to the Buddha, to the supplication to the medicine Buddha, as well as chanting the names of the Buddha. Those really has lots of merits and could ease your sickness. Of course, in terms of sickness, there are sickness that happens in this lifetime that's because of the imbalance of 4 elements. But there are also illness that comes that was the reason of maturation of previous karma. And sometimes it could be other people's curses or a black spell. Therefore, it's also necessary for us to chant mantras, and we can chant mantras and blow that mantra power into water and then drink it. That would really purify and really ease your suffering. Of course, the ability and energy of chanting mantras could be also very different. So the healing power could be also very different. But this mantra, the power of mantra is in fact quite miraculous. When you're talking to doctors, the Western doctors and Chinese doctors and Tibetan doctors, in fact, they all have their different recipe or different formula. But when it comes to the kind of healing or kind of medicine that is a healing that goes through the mind is very different. Therefore, some great doctors used to say that people whomsoever only cures patients' physical illness, that's not a real doctor. So you have to heal the sickness from the mind aspect as well. There are miraculous powers in Buddhism, in faith. In fact, it also has something to do, whether if it works or not, it has something to do with your faith as well, with how much you're devoted as well. If you have lots of faith, then it seems that the power of the bodhisattvas are stronger. And if you don't have a great faith, then it seems the power is rather weak. It is very similar to Christianity as well. In Christianity, they also have group prayer for people who are ill. They pray to God, pray to Jesus, and wishing the ill person get well soon. And that would also contribute to the recovery of the person, of the sick person. And the Christians also say that the faith is a great factor in terms of healing as well, because in Buddhism, we also say that people with great faith, they would receive great blessings, and people with mediocre faith would receive mediocre faith, and people with no faith receives no blessings.
他们一种这个赐予一种力量吧，就是然后呢，就是马上复活啊，还有一些病人呢，就是马上就是得到这个健康。
In the Bible, it also included lots of the stories of how Jesus healed others through different miraculous actions. I think many people probably read the Bible, and you can see how through prayer as well as faith and devotion, the healing power transmitted from Jesus really healed those sick people as well. The bodhisattvas, they manifest in many different ways. Doctors and nurses, sometimes the king of medicine, and sometimes the doctors as well. As the aspiration chapter of Bodhicharya Avatara talks about how we should make aspiration of healing others as doctor, nurse, and medicine. In the classics of Dharma Garden with Grove of Gems, it talks about how bodhisattvas make the aspiration of may I become the tree of supreme medicine, with the crest that covers all realms of living beings, and if my regard they see me, think of me, or take me down, may these always be the cause to dispel their illnesses and poisons. If all sentient beings, whenever through touching, through seeing, through any kind of form of contact, they can be eased from their illness. That's the aspiration of bodhisattvas. That's how bodhisattvas manifest in different forms. There are sayings that if ginseng roots looks like a person or has a person form, it has more medicinal usage or has more medicinal elements in it. Whenever we see people who are ill, whenever we want to eradicate their sickness, we should make the aspiration of, may I become the medicine, may I become the doctor or nurse to help all the sentient beings. Majority of us didn't study medicine. If directly you want to benefit sentient beings in this lifetime, it's a bit difficult. But next life, we can become a doctor, a nurse, and so on. We can still make such aspiration. But what I notice is that lots of doctors and nurses, they want to give up their career. They don't want to be engaged in as a doctor anymore because it doesn't really earn much money and it's too tiring, too stressed, and so on. In fact, if you're a good doctor, you could really benefit lots of people. Lots of our practitioners over here, if you have the ability of using medicine, if you were a doctor, and so on, I think you should volunteer. You should come out and volunteer to help others. As long as you're not using this career to earn money and to lie to people, to deceive others, I think that's fine. In Buddhism, in culture, In our society, we say that if you want to get something with good content, you would have to pay. So similarly, if you use your profession in this world, you can charge for it because you need it to for your livelihood. Therefore, I think lots of doctors and nurses, you must have studied for a long, long time. Therefore, it must be quite a pity to give back all your knowledge to your teachers and schools afterwards. So don't sidetrack to other professions halfway. In this world, there are so many people who are ill and sick, and it's really difficult to watch them suffer. And because whenever we are suffering from illness, we would feel that all of our hope is on the doctor. And whenever we're ill, whenever we see the people in white robes, they must be the manifestation of medicine Buddha, and please save me from this suffering. But whenever we're not ill, we don't really care much about those people in white robes. In our world, not many people want to be doctors and teachers anymore, because people who are contributing to this world positively are not treated well in this society. And then in such a way, we are really getting more distant with others in terms of our value, as well as the society is declining in terms of its value as well. At first, then the gurus and doctors would get very famous, and another types of guru and doctors would get arrogant. At first, they may be very compassionate, and the doctors has this mind of service. Slowly, with fame and money, then their service are no longer that with that much of altruistic aspiration anymore. So in such a way, the gurus and doctors are very similar. And there are doctors who are very confident in saying that, well, you can just take this medicine, just take this, and then afterwards you'll be fine. Otherwise, come back to me. And for people who have such great abilities, you should really stand up and make yourself available to cure people in this world. Maybe nowadays, because of the junk food, the pollution of the environment, people get ill very easily, and more people are getting sick. The technology nowadays are quite advanced. If we can really use this technology, lots of developed countries could use such advanced technology to extend people's lifespan. If you go to Japan and then go to Africa, you would notice how the medicine and the technology really help to extend people's lifespan. Just as in Buddhism, we talk about skillful means or methods to extend the longevity of people. I didn't even practice the longevity practice yesterday. I myself, I don't really have lots of grasping towards longevity. In fact, I've never really participated in the longevity Dharma assembly ever since Pongso Rinpoche's time. In Chengdu, Pongso Rinpoche was ill at the time. And Pongso Rinpoche said that the longevity sadhana has lots of blessings. So some lama came to us with the blessed Amrita pills and give it to us. Pongso Rinpoche asked, how are people practicing? And then that person said, everyone's practicing really well because everyone's so afraid of death. Well, to me, myself, long life or short life, it doesn't really matter. I think maybe the more I feel... the less I'm a grasp to longevity, I think I'll live longer. So Bodhisattva make the aspiration of curing the sickness of sentient beings. The second one talks about famine, the kalpa famine. Where the Bodhisattva aspire to manifest himself as food and drink. And after they receive the food, drink, and no longer hungry, thirsty, or cold, and the Bodhisattva would benefit the sentient beings with the Dharma. Kalpa of famine is also around the time of when humans' life expectancy is around 10 years old. Around that time, there's no food or drink. People are suffering from famine and hunger. And those people would dig out the dead people's bone from previous time and boil them. Boil them in a soup. And then in such a way, they would live for a long time. And sometimes they can only find a grain of rice or a grain of food, and that's how they would eat. In Qing Dynasty, where there's the story of how a person would only eat one grain of rice and they could survive for a whole year. Just as how it described in that book. A grain of rice. A grain of rice could last for a long period of time. During that kalpa, not many people were born. It's only slowly from that time, people's life would continue to grow. Or life expectancy would get longer and longer from then. So during such kind of really difficult kalpas, the sentient beings are suffering in such a way. In fact, not only in those kalpas, in our time, the sentient beings are also suffering from famine, from hunger in Africa. In Yemen, as we talked earlier, and in Venezuela nowadays, due to political upheaval as well as warfare, in Venezuela there's no electricity, there's no doctor, there's no police. The whole country is completely shut down. And in such a way, the world, this country is also suffering from famine because there's no way of keeping food and lack of food. Venezuela has a great resource of oil, but because of the upheaval in the society, because of the political changes, there's no electricity for a long period of time over there now. In the hospital, in the morgue, because of lack of electricity, they had to just let the corpse rot. In fact, we don't have to talk about the future kalpa of the famines, the future kalpa of warfare, but we can really get to know how many people are suffering in the darkness, how many people are suffering because of famine. When I was in Africa, I often remember how in the Buddhist text, where it talks about the kappa of a famine. Once I gave something to an old lady, she said that there are 9 people in her family. And then I asked her, the food I give you, how long is it going to last you for your whole family? She said, there's nothing else I can do. I just have to die. And she was really desperate. It's not some place that's as difficult to imagine. It's not a fairy tale. It's not a future kalpa. It is only 13 hours flight away from you. If bodhisattvas could manifest to benefit these sentient beings who are suffering from hunger, that would be wonderful. Therefore, for people whomsoever could make such aspiration, have a great determination, I think you should really try to help those. Because in such poor places, there are so many there's so many lack of security, and there are so many poisonous bugs, and there are really terrible conditions. So for Mahayana practitioners, or even not a Mahayana practitioner, in this world, if you have this altruistic mind of helping others, this is very, very precious. So if you could make such aspiration of manifesting in such a way to benefit others, whenever you see people who are poor, who are suffering, then you should try to help others within your ability, within your capacity. Sometimes helping one or just a few people is rather very simple. Therefore, you should try your best to benefit them, and on the other hand, you should try to make such aspiration of benefit them in the future.
吉田菩萨在入菩萨行论里面呢，也是讲过，就是什么盘天这个降世。
As Bodhisattva said in Bodhicharyavatara, where he made the aspiration of raining down a flood of food and drink might dispel the ill of thirst and famine, and in the ages marked by scarcity and want, myself appear as drink and sustenance.
所以我们现在的这个实践当中的这个事物也好，就是那么就是出现饥荒的时候事物的话呢，也是可以说
In our world, the food as well as the food that appears in the time of a famine, they could be those food could be the manifestation of bodhisattvas. In the 60s, there was a great famine. Those trucks where they send those the food are quite memorable. I went to the school earlier and a person said that, oh, that place was where my mother died, and she died during a famine due to hunger. I think die because of hunger sounds very, very strange or very new to the modern years. Just as the other day I showed a picture of a young girl who died because of lack of nutrition and famine. That was just one image out of many that happens in this world. One case out of many. Therefore, during our King of Aspiration chanting, let's make such aspiration. It's quite important to make such altruistic aspirations. In fact, whatever we do, the action is not the most important, and the most important is whether if our aspirations are kind or not. Then the next verse, when armed soldiers appear in the middle of a kalpa, in the kalpa of warfare, he generates a sympathy for them. He converts the sentient beings, causing them to abide in non-contention. And such kalpa would last for 7 days because of people's anger and aggression and their harmful mind. Everything around them appears as sharp swords and weapons. And during that time, the bodhisattva would appear as a person or as a person with a sympathy for them. And he would teach the sentient beings and cause them to abide in non-contention, in a place where it's non-contention. So this is the kalpa where this is a kalpa that would happen during the time when human beings only have 10 years of life expectancy. Sometimes I would see when families quarrel with each other and fight with each other, it seems that everything around them also appears to be weapons. The bowl and the cups and everything around them. In fact, it is no different than the kalpa of warfare at all. And I think during that time, then the bodhisattva should manifest right away, saying that stop fighting, stop fighting. In such a world when so many sufferings happen in the world, in such a time when so many sufferings happens in this world, in fact, it reminds me of a person. His name is Desmond. He insisted on going to the war his father, his fiancé, all tried to convince him of not going. But he insisted too. But he was a very kind person. Many people thought that he wanted to go to the battlefield because he wanted to kill people. In fact, that's not true. Instead of killing people, saved people. He saved 75 or 100 in some different records. He saved the Japanese and as well as the Americans on the battlefield. His intention of going to the battlefield was not to kill. He went to the battle and saved many. He was awarded by an American president because of his contribution in the battlefield. A doctor could save many people, and soldiers as well, they could save many people on the battlefield. So during the time of kalpa of warfare, at that time we should generate sympathy towards people who are in the war zone. But not just the war zone. In fact, not many of us have the opportunity to go to any kind of battlefield, but any quarrel, any conflicts are also considered as warfare with aggression. Nowadays, people not only do not want to get involved in such fights and quarrels, they would take photos of them. That really shows the lack of morality. Once I came through the Kanding area, I came down my car and started to try to convince them and not to fight because the group of people all had knives in their hands. I came down the car, despite there are people trying to convince me of not breaking their fights, because they could just be pretending to be fighting, but they are robbers. After my intervention, they all left without fighting, so I was really happy. I think for people, for Buddhists, it is the best of not to fight or quarrel, not to have conflicts. A little conflicts and little fights, it's not avoidable. Sometimes because of the volunteer work, you may then have some difficulties with one another, but afterwards just forget it. Don't hold a grudge. Do not hold on to aggression and hatred in your heart, because as Mahayana practitioners, you should not keep those kind of grudges. Whenever I go to different places, I often feel that the practitioners from the Laronggar lineage often talk a lot about practice and contemplation and studying. I think this is really wonderful. Maybe it's because of my arrogance of liking my own group. But what I notice is that there are groups which prone to more fights and conflicts within. people who often talk about other people's faults, I think they really don't have a good practice of compassion, of equanimity. And on the other hand, they probably don't have a great study, or they are not very diligent in their study.
这是如果我们这个爱这个众生的话，那就像母亲就是看到孩子的这种不如法的时候，
If we love all sentient beings as the mother sees their children, I think through such an eye, you won't be able to hold grudge or have lingered aggression towards one another.
然后让这些众生呢，就让他们
So during the kalpa of warfare, the bodhisattvas would generate sympathy for them and causing these sentient beings to abide in a state of non-contention. We should talk with one another with harmony, with peace, and try to solve the problems that you have between one another. That it be the conflicts between a family, between brothers and sisters, and between volunteers, between Sangha members. I think that's really the best way, harmoniously, peacefully, and talk things out. This is really the best way of solving any kind of conflicts.
那么下面呢，就是讲如果有这个大战争啊，就是那么立志一等你的话，那就是菩萨呢，就是现这个
If there are great armies facing each other with equal strength, the Bodhisattva manifests his great power and subjugating them imposes peace. After we talked about the kalpas of epidemic and famines as well as warfare, in fact, according to the Compendium of Yogacara Shastra, where it talks about if you refrain from killing for a day, you won't be reborn in the kalpa of epidemic. If you make offering food to a monastic, then you won't be suffering from the kalpa of famine. And if you give others medicine that they need, then you won't be reborn or suffer from the kalpa of warfare. So the next verse where it talks about when there are two great armies where their strengths are equal to one another, it is the Bodhisattva would manifest his great power. Because if one party or one army is much stronger than the other, the war would finish within no time. But when the two armies are with equal strength, then many people would get hurt and killed. That is why the Bodhisattvas would manifest his great power. I think people's karma and habitual pattern is very interesting and very different from one to another. In the place where I came from, people usually would consider that subjugating others are the most important. That's the most important thing for the small village. According to the Samyukta Gama, where it says that where there is a story about a conversation between one Brahmin and a Buddha. The Brahmin asked the Buddha, saying that, well, in my village we say that whomsoever are killed in our village by others or by defending our village, then they could be reborn in the heaven realm, in the celestial realm. Is that correct? The Brahmin asked the Buddha, but the Buddha kept quiet. And the Brahmin asked 3 times, and the Buddha kept quiet for 3 times. And then the Brahmin had to change a different way, and they said that, see, if a person killed others, then is that person going to hurt other people's mind or other people's heart? And then the Buddha said, of course that would. And it is because that comes from the 3 poisons of the person who attacks the other, and the other person definitely will get hurt. And then the Brahmin couldn't help but cried out loud. And the Buddha said, well, when you asked me, I didn't answer, so why are you crying now? I didn't answer until now, so why are you crying now? You had to have an answer, isn't it? And then the Brahmin said that, no, I'm not crying for myself. I'm crying for all the people who killed others for this for protecting of this village. And I am crying for the people who died because of protecting this village, because they want to be reborn in the celestial realm. And after this conversation, the Brahmin, as well as the village, the people of the village all took refuge of 3 jewels. I watched a video earlier. It is a video of South Sudan where it had many civil wars within. The Pope Francesco came to South Sudan, and he kissed the feet of the state leaders and asked them, as well as thank them for keeping the country safe without warfare. His intention was to stop the warfare because in South Sudan, due to civil war, there are more than 400,000 people died over there. I think the action of a pope coming down and kiss the feet of those state leaders in order to pacify the warfare, I think that's such a great action. When I ask myself, would I do the same? I could probably do that, but then when I thought about if I were to ask to kiss one's feet in order to pacify the 2 people's fight, would I do that? I think the religious personnel, whenever it comes to whenever it comes to fights and warfares, I think the religious personnel should really make the contribution to pacify such conflicts. Some people may say that you are digging your nose into other people's business, but as practitioners, as Mahayana practitioners, they should use their different ways of making peace. Yes, we often say that world peace, we often say peace, but we should make our actions to maintain this peace.
然后下面就是
This is
一切
quite
这个中
important.
土当中呢，就是所有的这些地狱啊，就是地狱里面有18大地狱啊，就这些。
In all the
如果这个
countries
地狱里面
where
众生受苦的话，
there are
那菩萨
hells,
呢，就是
does he
冲
go
着
to save
很
the
快就
sentient beings
到了
there
那些地狱
from
里
their
面
sufferings?
度这个众生啊，就是他们就
So in very short period of time, the bodhisattvas would manifest themselves in hell realms and alleviate their sufferings as well as providing them help and comfort.
菩萨呢不可能以业力而产生的，应该是以愿力而产生的。
Bodhisattvas
就是就像
are
地藏菩萨所
not
讲的一样，就是
born because of karma. They are born because of aspiration. Just as Kshitigarbha made the aspiration of as long as the hell realm is not empty, I'll continue to manifest in such a way. In fact, the hell realm is really scary. You may say this and that you want to make such aspiration, but the hell realm is really, really the suffering of a hell realm really surpass all your imagination. That's what Ponzo Rinpoche used to say. So, going to give you the next verse. I'm going to teach the next verse. In all the countries, wherever animals devour one another, he always manifests beings born there to provide benefit for them there. The animals, they have such a way of living. The big one would devour the smaller one would devour the smaller one, and they often kill one another. They are very much ignorant as well as stupid. So bodhisattvas would manifest in the form of animals, not only as human beings, as ox, as horses and elephants. In such a way, they would benefit such beings. In the Tibetan text, where it says that to provide dharmic benefits for them, in Sanskrit, in the tongue translated Chinese version as well as in the Japanese version, it all says to provide a dharmic benefit for them. I have so many sparrows in my yard, and I hear so many chirping over there ever since the very early morning, even before the sunlight, even before any light outside, they would started chirping. I think within those, they must have a big boss who is teaching over there.
我们那个佛传里面就是讲那个就是什么何其四瑞啊，就是何其四瑞呢，就是有何其四瑞的故事嘛，就是这个里面的也是他们都是佛菩萨的化现。
In the story of auspicious four animals or harmonious of four animals, it talks about how the animals convinced the human beings to be harmonious. I think it is a little different than the great Prajnaparamita Shastra, because in that story it talks about three animals. It has the three animals of a bird and monkey and elephant. They argued about who is more elderly. Then the youngest one should take care of the oldest one. And then it turns out the elephant is the youngest, and then the bird was the oldest. So the three animals stand on top of each other. The younger one on the bottom and the oldest one on the top. It is lucky that the elephant wasn't the oldest, otherwise it really squash all the other two. And when they're doing this, a hunter saw the three animals are in such a harmony and respect with each other. Then the hunter reported to the king. The king was really touched, and he started propagating the morality of respecting the elderly and caring for the youngest. So that morality became the kind of foundation in that society, and the society was in peace for a long period of time. So sometimes the animals sometimes the bodhisattvas would manifest in such an animal form to benefit others. In terms of propagating the Dharma, we usually say that do not be so stiff in terms of the teaching. Do not be so propaganda-like in terms of teaching the Buddha, teaching the Dharma.
就如果比较愚笨的一个牧民的话，那就是不管是下雨也好，这个太阳怎么样的话，那就一直在外面，那这样最后自己身体。
A wise herder, they would take the herds out whenever it's sunny outside, and whenever it's raining outside, they won't go out. So the key is not to be too diligent, be too pushy in terms of the Dharma. You should watch the different time, and you should watch different conditions. Only go out when the conditions are mature. You can use different ways, different forms, as birds, as animals, when it's hard to benefit others as human beings, and whenever it's difficult to benefit in that form, you can manifest as different ways. And next class, we'll talk about skillful means. We'll stop here.